There is a major shakeup in the executive leadership of the Xbox division, and everyone is worried about AI, but I think no one is talking about the actual reason why we should be concerned. To start, what happened? Phil Spencer, a long-term Microsoft employee, I think he's been with Microsoft for like 40 years, for the past 12 or so years, leader of their Xbox and gaming division, is retiring. First of all, congrats to him. I still, again, he's a controversial figure, but I think he did the best that he could with the cards that he's been dealt in this role. So I actually think kudos to him for a lot of things that have happened and a lot of things and a lot of good stuff that happened under his leadership. But also, there's some controversial things we're going to talk about that did affect the company's performance and also kind of like the current state of things in the gaming industry. And as I mentioned, like the guy has been around for a little while. Back in 2014, he essentially became the leader of the division. Then they created kind of like the actual, what do they call it? I think they call it like Microsoft gaming division or Xbox division within Windows that essentially incorporate all the acquisitions that they've made. The thing that worked with him was a lot of interesting content, a lot of interesting gaming products that they released. The console generation shift has been icky, and this is where I wanted to talk about the fact that like one of the biggest, I guess, gripes, negatives against Phil's leadership, besides some things again we're going to talk about the studios, is the fact that under his tenure, we see this swing where for the past like 5 or so years, the Xbox consoles are just not selling. We see this downward trend at the same time when like, PlayStation 5 is like hitting record breaking numbers, right? They're already creeping up to the $100 million consoles sold versus about roughly 30 million sold by Xbox. So there is this kind of like situation happening where Xbox becoming less and less of a gaming brand and more just one of the things that Microsoft does. And so you can see that right, wrong, or different, when you see these kind of trends, when you see those things happening, you might start considering new leadership to decide on a new direction for this division. The thing is that we'll talk about some of the effects that Microsoft has been going through with Xbox. There have been a lot of rumors already. The fact that Satya Nadella, the current CEO of Microsoft, have been pushing Phil to kind of like drive up the profitability, ensure they create very predictable machine out of the Xbox, which is tough in the gaming environment. And so I can also see the fact that a lot of these changes that we've been seeing recently about major layoffs in the gaming studios, shutdown of the gaming studios, right? Like those kind of changes, shifting focus away from the gaming consoles, because this trend is not only because the market didn't want to buy consoles, it's because just Microsoft didn't care about selling the consoles in the first place. So there was a very distinct decision-making process in place, which I don't think necessarily Phil had a choice of. He was kind of like handed over the orders and he had to go and execute. But again, also from the perspective of his own leadership and things that he's really good at as a leader, as someone who plays video games, was not necessarily executed perfectly. And specifically, it is around all these studios that they've acquired and pretty much done nothing with them, right? Like there's barely any exclusive interesting games to show for out of all these massive talented teams that they've acquired. So what we arrive at today is we have Asha, who is now essentially the new CEO of this division. And interestingly enough, Asha Sharma, she doesn't come with a gaming background. Or contrary to, say, Phil Spencer, who've spent all 40 years pretty much exclusively in the gaming division of Microsoft, Asha, as you can see, is pretty much operator. She's coming from the background, working at Meta, working at Instacart, now working for the past couple of years at Microsoft within their core AI division. She's an operator by heart. And that can be that something also resonated with Satya, who's been kind of like coming through the ranks as one of those operators on the cloud side of things, right? As the cloud was getting bigger and bigger, that's her background. And of course, as you can imagine, people saw this, and especially people saw the fact that she's from core AI team, and the whole hell broke loose in terms of, oh my God, she's gonna slap everything, right? And even she had to come around in her messaging again. I think it was either on Twitter or one of the other publications yesterday or like the day after the announcement, just to emphasize, like, hey, we're not going to have a tolerance for the bad AI. It's all going to be fine. And AI kind of like been dominating these news lines where, again, I think people kind of like missed the point where I think Xbox will really go for AI or not AI. And for that part, I want to talk about this dynamic because I think it's important and it kind of like underpins my point and where I think Xbox will go within the Microsoft division. So first of all, we have this like three parameters that I think heavily influence this next direction where we're going. One, you probably is tired or you are tired of hearing about the fact that like RAM costs ridiculous amount, like RAM tripled because of the fact that like all AI companies starting with OpenAI bought like the entire stock of available RAM for the next like year to 2 years. Memory followed, and it's primarily fast memory SSDs and NVMe's. They followed, and essentially those were also bought out, so it's impossible to like essentially purchase a reasonably priced items within those two, specifically fast memories, right? Like DDR5, and for the memory, as I said, NVMe's, SSDs. Although hard drives, I'm hearing, is something that's being affected, and they are increasing in price as well. So that's negatively affecting, and both of those pieces are actually included in the console. They're key, right? If you want fast loading times in your console, you want to be on NVMe, right? You want actual processing and kind of like no bottlenecks between, say, CPU and your GPU and everything that's happening within the game itself. You probably want some extra headroom on RAM space, and even onboard memory for the gaming GPUs themselves. That's also being affected because it's all cut pretty much from similar, wafers, so to speak. So you have this multiple effects on the pricing of the memory and the hardware. So that's why it's kind of like in red, it has a negative effect. So as a company like Microsoft, you look at this and you're saying, like, do we really want to be building consoles? Like, PlayStation came out recently and said that they might delay PlayStation to like 2030 almost. PlayStation 6 until 2030 because of the fact that the prices are so ridiculous. And if they are to sell the console or assemble the console today at these prices, they're going to have to sell it for like $1,200, right? So, and no one's going to buy PlayStation at $1,200. So you have this issue. On the positive side, you have Game Pass, and the Game Pass is essentially a streaming platform. It's a subscription platform that allows you, for like a price of like $20 to $30 per month, play 100 plus games for free. And a lot of them are like major primary titles. A lot of new, exciting kind of like titles that are coming out on Xbox drop within day to week on that subscription service. So instead of, if you're buying more than say like a couple of games a month and play them, you would, on the current pricing, would spend like what, $60 to $70 per game, so $120 to $140. Instead, you just pay $20 to $30 and you play them for free, right? And then you uninstall and play something else. So that drove a lot of revenue for Microsoft. I'm going to talk about the actual numbers in a second. And the third one was the fact that they kind of like decided, hey, this is going well. We can expand it. We need people to subscribe to this service on other platforms. So guess what? Let's go multi-platform. And they essentially started to release what used to be game exclusives on PlayStation, on Nintendo. PC was already benefiting from it, and PC has its own kind of like version of that Game Pass as well. There's Game Pass Ultimate that kind of like gives you access to all the platforms currently, at least Xbox and PC. But I fully see them expanding that Game Pass feature to like PlayStation or to Nintendo, pending licensing and all that stuff that they have to figure out. So they decided to go multi-platform, and Sensor starts selling their IP, their games through other platforms. I put it in yellow because one would argue financially it's actually a positive move. They've been, and again, on the next kind of like visual, we'll talk a little bit about the actual effect. Downside was, once you go multi-platform, you kind of shoot yourself in the foot and you remove the reason to buy an Xbox. Because if Xbox won't have exclusive games, and those games will be equally available on the PC or the console, if I have a console or PC already, like be it like PS5 or PC, like why would I buy Xbox? There's no need for me to buy the hardware. And this is where the reason I kind of like point out to this piece of marketing, I can maybe scale it up a little bit to make it easier to see. But the idea of this marketing program was essentially, everything is an Xbox. That was the vision that they set. The idea is, and I fully expect it, is that you can, again, play Microsoft games on Steam, which is another Steam OS, which is another kind of like expansion multi-platform. You can play it on the TV, you can play it through like Amazon Stick, right? And they're gonna have some sort of like streaming. They've already have a service that allows you to stream games, so now you can do that. You can play it again on Meta glasses, right? You can still have an Xbox, but you also have a phone and a laptop and so on and so forth. So they're trying to signal that, hey, you can now play Xbox games everywhere. And again, that shoots in the foot the idea that you now need to buy a console, but it does give a boost to a service like Game Pass, because if everything is a platform and you sign up for $30, now all of a sudden you can play all these games on all these platforms. Pretty good deal if you have time to play games. And you can see it in the financial performance now, right? So funny enough, and I'll tell you why it's mattering in a second, but it's like, it was to the point that Microsoft now became the top publisher in the world and the top publisher selling games on PlayStation, which is like mind-blowing if you grew up like myself in the world where there were like console wars, and it's like, are you an Xbox and like green club, are you in the blue club with PS3? Like, we now have essentially one of the key players just going on top of the other one saying like, hey, I'm just going to sell games into you and I'm going to become the biggest publisher in your vertical, which is crazy. Game Pass that I've mentioned generates nearly 5 billion now. I think it's like 34 million subscribers or something like this. It's like, it's a ton of subscribers. They're growing. Hardware, as we said, declining, but the gaming revenue is increasing, right? Almost like double digits year over year, which is great. Those are like positive signals across the board. And the thing is that when I look back at this kind of like structure, I actually think that there's a positive play for them thanks to this. Like, as much as maybe I agree to some extent that, hey, going multi-platform removes the need for me to buy Xbox. On the other hand, like, I already have PC, I have a PS as well. It's like, I have the Switch. Do I really care? I just want to play good games. That's my goal. I want to play good games. I don't care really what platform I'm going to play, as long as I can connect my Xbox controller, which is still the best controller in the world, in my opinion. But it doesn't matter to me. So it's a successful strategy that you can pursue. But my concern is that this is not why Asha was hired. Again, if we come back to the point that Asha is an operator, she knows well how to operate well-structured organizations, make them profitable. She has two, like, double mandate right now, in my opinion. So Asha needs to build a predictable and a profitable division out of Xbox. You get those two, your boss is happy, and that's Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft. And I'll be very, like, frank with you right now about this one. I don't blame her if that's what she's going to focus on, because let's face it, this is a massive career opportunity, right? And I'm just going to step away from gaming for a second, but I do operations. I'm an operator in most of the companies I've ever worked with, like those who have mandates as well. If I'm given an Xbox division, one in a lifetime career opportunity, which I'm sure comes with a very healthy salary, stock options, and all those things, like life-changing amount of money, right, that you can potentially make, and I can take care of my family and take care of my close ones, and all I need to do is just make sure I kind of like deliver on those couple of metrics to make sure my boss is happy and he keeps me employed within this role for the next few years, so I can continue kind of like accumulate the wealth to support my family, if that's my prerogative, which it is. Like, I don't care about the cars and the house and all that stuff. Like, I want to take care of my family. I'll do it. And I'll, even if, say, I'm gamer at heart who believes that Xbox should have a lot of exclusive games, personally. But if it doesn't jive well with the direction that my boss is giving me, I'll try to nudge him. I'll try to create data-driven reasons why my suggestion works. But ultimately, if it's between my career, this opportunity, and holding, ground and being very like draconian about my philosophies on the future of Xbox, I'll take a job. I'll take that job. And again, it's not a maybe perfect answer for anyone who's super passionate about gaming, but that's the reality of things, right? Because 2-3 years from now, when she's out of this role, barely anyone's going to remember her, right? People will move on. People will forget. Her family will not forget and will not, quote unquote, move on, because hopefully they're going to be better off and she's going to be able to take care of them. And if Satya, throughout her tenure as a leader, is happy with her as a leader, she'll have so many more opportunities. Becoming CEO of other major tech companies, continue to work with Satya. Satya moves on somewhere else. She might bring her over. She might go private equity. She might go, like, the opportunities will be massive for her in her career. So that, I just want to put it out there. Like, her decision making, as long as it makes sense from the Microsoft strategy perspective, no matter how much we disagree with it, I will not judge her for it. She's not hired to be representative of the entire world. She's hired to be representative of the interests of the Microsoft as a corporation. And that's the reality we have to face, no matter how much we hate it, right? And so from that perspective, like, when I look at this idea and I see like, hey, her job will be, in my opinion, if I have to guess based on my 15 years in business operations, going to be focus, create for me predictable business. I no longer want the swings. I no longer want surprises. I don't want to take impairments on the forecasted revenue. I want predictable business out of you. Because I'm running public company, other parts of my company are growing, they're predictable. I want you to do the same here. And profitability, because we're running a profitable company, we're making hand over fist money. Give me that. And this is where I think the future of Xbox is in the tools. I don't think it's gaming or directly gaming in the sense of like they're going to continue to leverage the plethora of the IPs that they have and really focus on creating like amazing, talented game related teams, right? So essentially game designers, producers, engineers, storytellers, all of that, and trying to create interesting, unique experiences. It's going to be very, what I would call iterative and focused on how do we make this machine super predictable and profitable. And I don't think it comes from video gaming. Because if you face kind of like the reality, right? And I've spoken of this before, video games world is very unpredictable. You can be a Sony and spend $400 million on a Concord and that game completely fails. And you can be a Silk Song, the group of like 2 people with a bunch of contractors, and you sell like hundreds of millions of dollars worth of that game, right? Quality is the predictive factor there. That's, I think you can arguably say, is that Concord was created as a game by the numbers. Like, this is the executive mandate. These are the key things that we see working in the marketplace. So we're going to lead with them and not with the actual value of the game as an experience. Silk Song, passion project, driven well by a couple of people who are really passionate about the product, take their time, create an amazing product. People like it, they buy it. The thing is that the definition and replicability of that model is very hard at a massive corporate level like Microsoft. It's easier on the studio level. If you're an independent studio, and Supergiant Games is a good example, right? Like Supergiant Games, small studio, I think there's about maybe 20 people there, right? The studio like this, they create amazing experiences, right? They focus and really craft their stories. They take their time. There's no rush to deliver the game on a specific schedule. That's not how Microsoft works. They're a public company. There needs to be a predictable set of revenues. They need to be coming at a certain margin so that the entire machinery fits within each other and it all works like a clockwork and investors can invest and shareholders are happy and so on and so forth. So those two worlds, heavily creative one and heavily kind of like predictable, profitable one, I think can be very hard to make to coexist together. And this is why if I'm like in Ash's position and I'm looking at my kind of like set of IPs and studios and what's available to me, I don't think I'm leaning as hard on the games, but I'm leaning a lot more on how do we support great gaming and setting up the infrastructure so that good games can be created by other studios. We sell and help publish them, but we're not responsible and our revenue is not tied to how well those games do. And even kind of like if we go to her statement, right, to the original post that they made, she kind of like dropped a line over here, and it's a very well crafted PR line. So kind of like a lot of those things I think set the stage internally and externally for Microsoft. This point about we will build a shared platform and tools that empower developers and players to create and share their own stories. When I read this and I combine it with her experience in AI and building products in profitable and predictable companies, to me, this sounds like, hey, can we create a set of tools for the developers and make sure they're successful? Can we also create a set of tools and experiences, probably some AI experiences within the IPs that we own, where the creators themselves can create their own stories? Like, make me an RPG game in the world of, name it, Call of Duty, right? Or make me a shooter in the world of Fable, right? And basically go and create your own experiences, play around with our IP, just keep paying us a subscription fee for the Game Pass to have access to it. And there's some sort of like extra luxe version of Game Pass that allows you to do those kind of things. That's the vision that I can foresee them creating for their business. And this is where I said early in the video, I have a concern around that, because if I would look on the merit of their financial performance right now that we spoke about earlier, right? About Game Pass financial performance, about the financial performance of Microsoft as a publisher on top of even PlayStation, they're doing pretty well. And in the world where Sony right now is struggling to figure out their hardware situation, the fact that they can go and sell their games on a much larger platform. So instead of 30 million just Xbox consoles and however many number of PCs, they can now go and sell on PlayStation, on Switch. Now they're partnering with Valve and sell on their Valve SteamOS, right? And we know like Valve's console will likely sell a ton. They have Steam Deck. All of this sets up this interesting situation where they have an opportunity to make massive amount of revenue by just being a very good publisher. So making right bets on the right video game studios, ensuring that talent feels secure, right? I didn't talk much about it right now, but like in the past, however many, like a couple of years since they've acquired all these companies, they like laid off 10,000 plus people in those companies. They shuttered major studios that were fan favorite, that delivered amazing experiences, all in that pursuit of profitability and ensuring they can feed the funds instead of burning them in a furnace of Xbox, feed them into that AI world, right? Which is a controversial decision, but that's what they've done as an organization. If they would revert something like that, and if they would say like, hey, we're going to use these funds that we're making right now on Xbox and we're going to place bets strategically on all these studios, it can actually pan out pretty well, and they can actually overtake PlayStation again, because PlayStation will have a hard time selling consoles for the next several years while this whole like RAM and memory situation stabilizes and people are still struggling to afford new consoles. In that world, to have a subscription service that offers you an access to like hundreds of games, amazing quality, some of the top sellers, all on any kind of platform, that to me smells like potentially a making of a major gaming company that takes over the industry. But I don't think they're going to go there. And primarily why they're not going to go there is because seeing what I've seen from Satya believes in that profitability and predictability. That world is not very predictable. You place the bets on studios they're going to take for the next like work for the next like 3, 4, sometimes 5, 6 years, develop amazing game experiences, and they might flop. And someone goes creates a game in like a year and it like goes gangbusters. That's the world that he doesn't want to be in. He needs to run a public company that has to set very achievable and realistic goals and achieve and overachieve them in order for that stock price to go up. That's the mandate of his job. The creating amazing gaming experience is not it. And this is why I think they're going to refocus. They're going to shift the focus. They're going to say, you know what, we're not going to do the gaming stuff as much. We're still going to, they have Fable right now coming up. They have Forza coming up. They have a couple of other gaming franchises they're working on. I still don't think support them. I still think that they will go and like invest in some of these gaming studios, but I really think what Asha will focus on, and that she's going to go out there and she's going to try to figure out what kind of tools we can sell, because tools are predictable. Tools have subscription services associated with them, right? Developers will have to pay us monthly or annually for those tools. Players will have to pay us monthly or annually for those tools. Creators will pay us. Someone else will pay us. The industry will be paying us monthly. This is the whole name of the game, predictable revenue. And because it's predictable, we'll be able to forecast it, and then we're going to make sure our margins are healthy. And so there we go. As Asha, as a CEO of Xbox, I hit my double mandate. I created the organization that's profitable and predictable. Nowhere in there is the focus on making sure they create the next future Mass Effect trilogy, right? Like next future, whichever, insert your favorite game, an amazing, series. All of it is going to be done in the name of profitability and predictability, which will be driven by the tools. Let's see. I'm curious to see. A little bit sad because there are a lot of IPs in Microsoft that I really enjoy. Like Fable is one of my favorite ones. I'm actually excited, and I hope they'll sneak the Fable out before all these changes happen. But yeah, I don't think necessarily it's all about AI. AI is part of it. It's part of the tools. But even without AI, I think the lack of predictability in this business is what will cause the change in Xbox. And I don't think the success that they've been seeing as a publisher is enough to change Satya's mind. And Asha will do a good job, I think. She's going to stick with her boss. She's going to do the right thing for the corporation, but it doesn't mean it's going to be the right thing for the gamers. I'll see you next Saturday. Peace.